right. So now I have the pleasure of introducing you to our speaker, Brad Hayden. And Brad is the CEO and co-founder of Adventive, which is an AI company. He's really gotten into a lot of innovative things in the last several years of his career. And I'm really excited about what he's doing at Adventive. What he's going to be sharing with us is, just different ways to use AI in creative ways. He's going to share some things that he's doing in his business, which is certainly a business to follow. And Brad, I'm going to turn it over to you. If you have questions throughout Brad's talk, put them in the chat. We're going to try to cram as many answers to those questions as we possibly can. So Brad moves fast. Thank you. That's the style I like. And Brad, I'm going to turn it over to you. Take it away. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Christy, and thank you, Cindy, and the whole team. It's an honor to be here. I'm a former boot camper as well. I was a boot camper in the fall of last year, and it was very helpful, and I'm excited to be here and kind of give back and share some thoughts on AI. So I'll share my screen and kind of just give you an overview of what I'm going to be presenting today, and then I'll leave plenty of time for Q&A because I definitely want to kind of make this a discussion and hear everyone's thoughts on AI. And feel free to add questions in the chat, and I'll try to look at them and see if it's applicable to talk about right then. But like Christy shared, I have 20 years of background in revenue operations. I formerly worked at Amazon and Dell Technologies. I currently work at an AI startup at Adventive, where we're empowering businesses of all sizes to use AI in their business and make it easy to implement. What I'm covering today is kind of three things. So one, I'm going to go into a GPT and just kind of showcase an example of people that are in career transition and how to use it real deeply and to kind of use it in multiple steps, just so everyone has a good foundation and can, take something away from today and apply it today. I'm also going to highlight some AI tools that I think are helpful in career transition, specialty AI tools, and I'll kind of highlight those. And then I'll highlight AI tools that you might be applicable when you're going into your next job position, or if you start a business, some tools that can be helpful, and just kind of give you a flavor of tools that are out there just so you can start experimenting with AI. So the first step is I'm going to just, pull up a GPT and share my screen, and I'm going to talk through it like a cooking show, and I'm just going to use it, and I'm going to talk through it and kind of share what's happening and why I'm doing it and kind of the outcomes that I'm looking for. But really, I'm just going to walk through 6 steps. So I'm going to, ask some questions about trying to figure out what I want to do next in my career, just to kind of brainstorm and ideate using an AI. I'm going to use that and take an action, and I'm going to update my resume, and I'll show you how. Then I'm going to, find a job application that I want to apply for and have that resume tailored for that specific application. You can also use it as you're going through questionnaires for a job application, and then I'll also have it prepare me a follow-up email to that job, and as well as a LinkedIn message. So I'll kind of jump in that now and reshare my screen. So what I'm sharing now is ChatGPT. So that's currently what I use, and I'll show you some other ones that you can use. And very simply, it starts with a prompt. When you're using a GPT, you want to think about, when you're using the free versions, you want to think about there's a trade-off when you're using a free version. When you're using a free version, a lot of times they're using your data and then they're kind of selling that data. When you use a paid version, you get a couple of benefits. One, it protects your personal data more. Two, you get access to the latest intelligence. So the free version is always going to be older intelligence. So if you're trying to research something that's very topical or very late breaking, kind of like AI, you're going to want some of the more recent models and stuff like that. And then when you're updating any projects that you're working on, you're going to get the highest level of AI that's available there that has the reasoning and kind of gives you different outcomes. So for today, I'm going to use their O4 Mini because it's fast and it's also one of the more accurate ones. I have not updated well, I guess I'll start with, I'm currently a CEO, and I'm trying to figure out, what I want to do next. So maybe I'm thinking about, I can just put that. Actually, one of the other cool things is you can just kind of chat with them too. So I'll just kind of start there when it's ideation mode, and I'll kind of switch over to here, and I'm going to talk to the GPT. Um, Hello, I am the CEO of Adventive, an AI startup company, but I'm thinking about switching and doing something different. So I'm thinking about being a chief business officer. What are the differences between a CEO and a CBO?
Hey there. That sounds like an exciting shift you're considering. So, as a CEO, you're typically responsible for the overall vision, strategy, and operation of the entire company. You're basically the top leader. Chief Business Officer, on the other hand, usually focuses more on the business side of things like partnerships, revenue generation, business development, and strategic growth. So, you'd still be a key leader, but you'd be a bit more specialized in driving the business side of things rather than overseeing everything. Let me know if you want to dive into any specific details about that.
So that's a simple way of using the audio version. I hope you guys heard that, but it does kind of start the conversation of a GPT. So now I'm starting to train a GPT. And so I like this idea. I think I'm gonna, switch to a CBO. I'm gonna dump my resume in there. So I've basically already updated my LinkedIn, but I don't have an updated resume. So all I did was export my LinkedIn profile to a PDF. I tried to just put the URL in earlier, but LinkedIn has protections in that wouldn't let it do it. So workaround was just export it to a PDF. And now I'll say update my LinkedIn resume into into an updated resume. For a CBO row. So now it's going to read my PDF. It's going to start updating my resume, and it's basically going to give me, an updated resume that's kind of updated for a CBO. So now it changed my summary to Chief Business Officer with 20 years. Now I might need to kind of tweak that a little bit, but basically it's kind of already given me the first draft to already work with very quickly. And so now my resume is updated, and let's say I found a job where I want to apply for this job and I need it to match up to this job. So this job is actually a chief retail officer, which is a little different than a chief business officer. But I can go back to the CEO, the GPT, and I will have it tailor it towards that job application, just so it kind of now further refines that resume and into that application. I think it's still okay. There's the prompt there. So now it's going to pull the information from the job description, and it will, update my resume and kind of make everything align into that. And nope, I might have got out of the window there.
So Brad, I'm going to jump in here.
Please do.
So, does this mean that it's how is it coming up with the information? Is it accurate? Is it over, kind of reaching on your skills? What's happening there?
Yeah, I think, the more you prompt it, and that's kind of part of what we're doing. So we're prompting it. So the AI is only as good as the prompting. And when we started with a fresh prompt, then we can basically, train it. So everything that I'm doing in here is a conversation, and I'm training it on that conversation, which is really me, and it's really my
Right.
branding and my personal information. So as we kind of get deeper into this conversation, it is going to get smarter. And then to your point, if you don't like the way some of the stuff listed, you can specifically talk to it or type it out and then help it kind of refine that if you want. So
Okay, but if it's citing skills that you don't have, then what?
then you would have to give it more information. So, it's obviously, if based on the information you give it, it's going to pull in additional information to help fill in the gaps. So if you don't
Okay.
like the information that it's pulled in and you don't think it's accurate, then yeah, that, everything I consider that a GPT does is kind of a draft, right?
Hmm.
It's really going to take you to look through it and edit it, and then kind of copyright it to make sure it matches the way you want it to.
Because the key here is for a hiring manager to read your resume and say, but you say on your resume that you did this when in fact you may not have, just because it matched the job description. Is that, I mean, you've got to edit it so for accuracy. It's not just about having it on your resume, right?
Absolutely, exactly. You needed to, you're just using AI as an assistant. So this is just a personal assistant. You're asking them to do a task, and then you have to make sure it's accurate and matches up to the task that you want. So absolutely, I'm using
Yeah.
very simple language of just asking it to change my resume to a completely different title that I haven't had before. So it quite will make some mistakes that you kind of need to edit it and stuff like that. And this GPT stands for general purpose technology. So this is just a general AI tool. And I'm going to show you specialty AI tools to where you don't have to do as much of this in it. But what's really great for these tools is you can literally research any topic and kind of um, um, kind of cater it towards what you want. So now I've updated my resume. I'm going to update my resume to apply for this job. And so it's just going to kind of keep updating, and it's going to get deeper into this. And then I'm going to have it prepare me some messaging to follow up once I kind of apply for it and stuff like that. So now you can see this is updated to be for a chief retail officer, and it's kind of started to align the keywords up from that job description and just kind of massage my resume in order to include that information in there. And then I can say, prepare me a follow-up email and a LinkedIn message to the CEO, and it will just go ahead and draft me up some follow-up messages after I apply for the role. So I think this is what's really powerful is just very simple in less than a few minutes. I've kind of updated my resume. I've found kind of ideated and talked to AI to help me figure out what I want to do next. I've found the job that I wanted to apply for manually. I've kind of pulled that job in, and now I've kind of tailored my resume into that job description. I have a follow-up email that I can send. I've got a LinkedIn message that I can follow up. So this is just a great way to get started and to kind of move quickly using a GPT. And then the nice thing about this, and this is kind of one thing that I want to highlight is, this conversation is always there, and you can kind of keep getting deeper into this conversation or come back to it a month from now. And that's really the powerful thing about using GPTs is if you have, you know, like personal finance, if you kind of keep a topic open on that and you just keep coming to that every month, then you're going to get deeper and deeper into that conversation, and you can ask follow-up questions that it'll remember from months or a year ago that where you might not have. So I'll pause here and see if there's any kind of questions on the GPT part, and then I'll kind of jump into some of the
Yeah,
other things.
Christy Connor has a really good point. So she found that it overestimates her skills or adds things that she didn't actually do by inference. So she has found it easier to have it edit it section by section so she can review it one step at a time. She gets a bit overwhelmed and has to ask it to go sentence by sentence and bold the changes. And so is this the way that she should be going through this? Is there another way?
That's a great point. So what she's kind of basically saying is if you want to keep, your GPT very boxed in on a topic, then you just keep the parameters very narrow. And then therefore, it's going to give you a narrow answer. So if I just pull up a prompt and just say, educate me on AI, it's going to clearly tell me whatever it wants to tell me based on that. So it's going to clearly educate me on a subject very quickly. But to your question, if you want to focus on your skills and you want to kind of polish your skills, then you would, start a GPT, and you would really want to start with your actual skills that you have started with, and then it can kind of help polish that. But yeah, if you just ask it, help me update my resume and add some skills, then it's going to give you some skills to start with. But you need to look through those and make sure those are the skills that you feel confident you can go to an employer and say that you can do. So.
And you mentioned earlier, you can train it so it knows you. And right. And Ponce said he's trained his GPT to be, completely tuned in on his professional experience. And then and I like what Manu said is prompt it to ask what skills you don't have that that don't match. What skills you're missing. And then another one, Amy says, asks, how do we get rid of hallucinations, making things up? Is it possible to feed it all of your skills and experience and train it so that, it just knows who you are and can more accurately?
I think the more specialty tools you get, the less hallucination you're going to get. So when it comes to GPTs, so general purpose technology, all these models that I'm showing here are trained on the whole internet. So when you ask a question, it's going to the whole internet. And, kind of fast forwarding to what we build at our company, we build custom GPTs for businesses. So basically, they're not allowed to go search the internet. If we build a GPT for a restaurant, they're only trained on that restaurant's menu and only on that restaurant's data. So it can't hallucinate because it's only an expert on that brand. But with these GPTs that we're using, they're literally going to the internet and everything. So the hallucination is the prompts are too broad. If you want to avoid hallucination, then you have to kind of really narrow in the topic. And then to people's points, like this is just a general prompt. So I'm starting a new topic, but I have a paid account. So the cloud data behind it kind of knows me. So if I ask a question, I'm afraid to, because this is I got all my data in it. But yeah, if I wanted to ask a question, like it would probably tell me stuff about me, um, because my account is trained on all of my data. But when I open up a new prompt, I'm basically starting a brand new topic. And when I start a new topic, it's training the conversation to stay, to that topic. And then I can get really deep into the topic. And then let's say that conversation was, months or years old, and I'm talking about a job, but then I'm talking about a trip here, or it kind of segues. You're inviting your GPT to hallucinate because now you've got multiple topics and multiple conversations going on. So when you ask a question about your job, it might pull in information from other questions that you asked about. So that's kind of where you need to start all over and then put in your best data, like your latest, whatever latest data you want to kind of retrain the topic on. So that's kind of the powerful thing. You just kind of start fresh, pull in fresh data, and then you've got a fresh new GPT conversation.
And this does really make it quick and easy and straightforward. So, as far as what your company is doing, tell us more about that, because that's really interesting how you're because when I think about, just keeping it to that restaurant, for example, I mean, you truly can train your GPT for, just very specific things.
Yep. Yeah, so that's a great example. We on our website, we kind of have examples of a phone agent. So this is really neat. This one's really cool. We just came up with, so you can kind of picture calling a restaurant and making a reservation. And our phone agents for the businesses that we create for a restaurant are trained down to an ingredient level. So when you call and ask a question about if I'm allergic to something, or does this, does what on your menu doesn't have mustard in it or nuts in it, it can answer those questions. So it speaks over 50 languages. So if you have customers calling in different languages, you can assist more customers. And then, having employees that are trained at that down detailed level, is tough. But with an AI, it's always, has that information. So we basically make it easier for brands to adopt AI, and we train GPTs to do simple tasks. So we train a GPT to become an expert at answering your phone, and they can answer the phone. They can take a reservation. They can transact a sale, or they can transfer the call to a human. And same thing, whether it's text, email, or a website chatbot, it's the same thing. We train it to do, only answer the questions you want it to answer and how you want it to answer, or how you want an employee to answer it. And then we avoid hallucination because we've completely boxed the GPT into only answering those questions. So that's how we take powerful technology like I just described and really narrow it down to the earlier question of avoiding hallucination.
That's really cool. And what are some of the other things that kind of are waiting in the wings for you?
Yep, right now we are developing a phone IVR for a sober living community. So that's a really powerful tool. If you've ever called and you get the old annotated system of press one, press two, same thing. When you call, it'll be an AI. So it'll help collect the data for your business. If there's information you need, leads, or you have an existing customer that you want to support, it can collect that information, or it can help uh, navigate the person to the right resource. There's a lot of cool things we're working on, and I think the agents is really the big thing. I think a lot of companies are going to start to realize that they can use agents in where they have kind of all this data that they've kind of written out on how they want their business to run. And these agents can do these real simple tasks, but do it 24/7, do it accurately and autonomously.
That's pretty cool. There are people so Tejal asked about projects in ChatGPT. Are you familiar with working on projects specifically? And she's using it for um by company search pursuits. So how would one do that?
Hey, Christy, can I
Yes, go ahead.
sorry I didn't write it well. Um, so Brad, I love this. I was curious, so custom chat GPTs, right? Um, I was trying to figure out when and how to use them because I don't understand the difference between that and just creating a new project and, whatever that topic area that you're wanting to contain the conversation in.
Yeah, a project. So, when we start a conversation, that's just kind of a new conversation. And these are all my kind of conversations here. But a project, would be taking multiple conversations and putting them into one GPT. So one thing I wanted to kind of highlight, I'm going to move over to Google LM now. So I was going to share our Google Workspace. As our company, we use Google for everything. And Google is really interesting because it has AI across its whole workspace. So just last week, I translated a Google Doc to Hebrew and it can edit your email. But for this specific question, this is called Notebook LM by Google. And what it allows you to do is pull in multiple docs, websites, YouTubes. So it allows you to pull in all the um, project information related to that project. You now have a chat where you can communicate and you can and share this with your team members and invite all your team members into this chat. And now when you guys are discussing this conversation, you have all the Google GPT is pulling in from all the docs, and it can also be a research assistant and go, find additional information. So this is how you can collaboratively work on projects together with an AI. And ChatGPT is the same. You can take multiple conversations and put it into a folder called a project. And then it's the same thing. It now references all those conversations and helps you kind of get deeper into a specific project.
Does that help, Tejal?
It does help. Sorry, can I ask one follow-up?
Please.
Yeah.
So Brad, can you go back to your ChatGPT screen?
Mhm.
Okay, you know that custom GPT, create a custom GPT feature?
I have not played with that yet.
Okay, never mind. That's okay.
That's advanced stuff, yeah. So you're creating your own GPT and you're kind of customizing that as a project?
I'm trying to.
Okay. That's good.
So Richard Brown asked, and a lot of people ask this, is you stated that you were concerned about putting in personal information. Can you talk about security and um, how to use it, how companies can determine if you used it? Oh, that's interesting. I mean, can somebody determine if you used Chat GPT for something?
Not that I'm aware of, but you just got to realize whatever data you're sharing in here is not private. So, and what I mean by that is it's just more aggregate. When you go to Google search, that's not private. So they're taking that data and saying, 1 million people searched for New York City last night or whatever's viral, that's what they're capturing. So it's not necessarily about you and what you did. But if the FBI was investigating you, they can dig into that. So there's a digital trail. But the more important thing is like the company data. You don't want your company data being contributed into research or statistics. So when you do a paid account, that protects the data and gives you more information. So a lot of companies restrict being able to share sensitive company data in these things unless they have a specific GPT that has the security protocols in it that you kind of mentioned. And then so that's another solution that we provide for companies. If companies are real concerned about data, we can actually build a server on their facility local, and then we can keep the LLM. We can build an LLM on that server so nothing goes to the cloud. So that would be a good example of companies that are real sensitive about data. From personally, we all just have to use the tools that are available, and you're not. I mean, there's always a chance that something can be hacked, but really, this is no different than using Google search. I mean, it's really the way I look at ChatGPT or anything else is this is kind of the modern day Google search now.
So Russ, you have your hand up.
Yes, that's great that it does Hebrew. What other languages does it do?
Yeah, so the GPTs they speak, over 50 58 different languages, and
Wow.
let me see if I can do a quick example here.
So they speak in right as well?
Yeah, so when you talk to these GPTs, the AI, they speak in multiple languages. So yeah, if I say, let me give an example here. Um, well, yeah, I mean, if I ask it to translate something in Italian, it'll do it for me.
Mhm.
So the AIs themselves can translate in multiple languages.
I'm wondering,
And
because
then
I'm
on the
curious.
Google Docs, like I
Yeah.
can take an email and I mean, I can pull it up if you want to see it. But yeah, you can basically just type up an email and then ask Gemini to translate it into a different language.
Yeah, if you
Or
wouldn't mind.
I can take this agenda and say, trans. So when we build stuff for customers, it's, if you got somebody calling in from a different language, they can basically ask or questions in their own language, and then the GPT will switch to that language and answer in for them. So
Okay.
it's
I mean, it probably does Chinese, I would think, though.
Oh, it probably does
Yeah.
all. I mean, that's
Yeah.
yeah, those common languages. So Grace writes, and I think this is really good. So she, eh, put all of these potential interview questions, and then but she says she has to repeatedly ask it to make sure to only use her about me info to rewrite her resume or cover letter. There is a way that you can say, this is only about this, use this exclusively every time, right, Brad?
If you put in a prompt, so you can, that's how the prompting goes. If you put in a prompt that says, only use this, or you can also put in a negative prompt, never use this word or don't use this word. We built something for a client in the UK, and I think it was, I forgot what the word was. It was like iterate or iterate or something like that. But in the UK, it means something different in the US, and it didn't make sense for them. But the AI kept using that word, so we had to add a prompt that says don't use this word, and then it basically took it out of its vocabulary. So we just had to train it to not use that word. But that's one example of how you can, you know, add in an instruction to help it avoid hallucination that you want it to avoid.
So, and then Tejal has another question. Do you have any advice on nonprofits and AI licenses? How can a nonprofit use it, low cost, etc.? Is that what you're asking, Tejal?
Yeah, so I'm trying to help a nonprofit implement AI in their workforce so that they can spend more time with client cases versus, administrative stuff. My question is, I'm going to meet with the IT outsourcer next week, and when you go into a client, what is the first thing you need to do for them? Is it get some kind of license, and is there a nonprofit license we should be looking at?
I'm not aware of any nonprofit licenses, but nonprofit's no different than any business. I would just go meet with that client, try to understand their business, get them to tell me about it, and really understand where their pain points are, what the problems they're trying to solve using AI that will help them kind of grow their business. I mean, our company kind of looks at AI as, the pivot into the 21st century. So everything before AI was kind of 20th century processes or 20th century technology. And now, we all have the collective opportunity to think about, and this is really, I think what today's conversation is about is like AI is going to be a part of your future. So now understanding it, playing with it, and kind of understanding how it can, improve things and how you would use it in your next job, I think is I think what's really powerful. When you go into an interview, they're going to expect you to have an opinion on AI or to have some thoughts on it. And the more you kind of have that, that's good. As far as the nonprofit goes, I mean, there may be some nonprofit SaaS out there that you might look at. But I
But
mean, again, you don't need to know the specific needs of that business.
right, so sorry, Brad, let me maybe I was over rotating on nonprofit, but So what I've seen is if you're a Microsoft shop, you know, the IT will typically go and get the Copilot Microsoft license, right? Or if you're a Google shop, you end up doing something similar. What's your advice of like, say if you don't have a stack and you're kind of open to different AI technologies, what would you say for a beginner organization? What should they go and get?
Mm. Well, I mean, that's really why we created our company because, we custom build solutions for nonprofits or businesses that don't have the IT teams and don't know how to figure it out. So, you bring up a good point is the S&P 500 is building all these applications to integrate with all this S&P 500 software. So, they're kind of taking all this old software and integrating it and trying to optimize it with AI. And then there's companies like us that are basically, creating AI from the ground up and helping SMBs kind of move away from some of that software. So, um, I think that's where the opportunities are. You either see software out there that you want to lean into, or you just want to kind of go custom build what you want to support your organization. So I think that's kind of the different options that you have available.
So Kyle asks, what are your experience with accuracy of information regarding paid for information? Example, explain this ISO standard to me, or does this design meet this standard? Does my design meet this standard? So, uh, what would you recommend? I mean, so if you have to pay for an ISO library, right? And then, but can ChatGPT or the GPTs search for that information, even though it's not accessible necessarily?
I'm not sure I understand that question.
Kyle, do you want to explain further?
Yeah, you want to elaborate on that question?
Sure. Like Christy said, you have to, I'm a mechanical engineer. So we design to say ISO standards for a medical device company. Those standards you have to pay for, $1,000 or $2,000 or, for the updated standard or whatever it is. But there's like 20 or so different standards. Point being, I guess, so if you ask if your design meets the standard, is it able to compare using the internet to what the standard says, or legally am I allowed to input these paid for standards into the GPT, or am I now putting this out into the internet and copyright infringement? So the standard itself is, you have to buy a license to read it. So it's not how does the GPT work with that?
That is a technical question, so I'm not sure I'll be able to kind of get into it, but there's just different ways to do GPT. So again, if you want privacy sensitivity and you want your customers using your brand to meet that, like we're working with a client right now, that doesn't want the government to have access to the data. So we're looking at building a server for them. So all the computing happens locally on their server. It never goes to the cloud. So that would be one example. If you're sensitive about data privacy, then, if it doesn't go to the cloud, then it can't leak into the cloud. So if you've got everything protected on your local server, and then you have security parameters around that local server, but that's the point of cybersecurity is you're trying to box in your gem, your most precious assets, and you're creating layers of security around that. So there's different ways to do that, and that's probably a little over my head, but that would be kind of a little overview of different ways you can do it. I did want to call out, there are specialty software tools. So we spent a lot of time talking about GPT, and you have to prompt it, but there are tools like this, and this would be a great tool for people that don't want to deal with all the prompting and you want like a resume tool to keep your resume updated. The nice thing about this tool is kind of like I shared with you, it's $12 a month, so it's very affordable, and it kind of takes away all the prompting, and it really creates the user interface just specifically around resume. And the nice thing is it'll automatically tailor your resume for each job application. So same thing, it's just helping you every time you apply, it's helping you make sure all those keywords are optimized in your resume that help you get past recruiters and stuff like that. So this is one tool if you want to just use special software on one topic and just keep it easier. And if you don't have a GPT license, I did want to kind of call this out, Perplexity instead of ChatGPT, because the nice thing is you get access to OpenAI, Google, Perplexity has their own LLM, so you're getting multiple LLMs for the same price of OpenAI. So if you were going to buy a subscription, this would be Perplexity is a good one to look at because you can
And what does Perplexity do?
it's the same thing as it's a OpenAI.
Oh,
So
yeah. And then you recommended, what was the tool right before that you recommended? Yeah, Calibrate.
Yeah, I'll send this out.
You know the CEO here, right?
I do, yeah. This is
Yeah.
This is a good company. They're helping college grads really get started right out of college, but this is also great for career professionals that want to use AI to make, if you're applying for a lot of jobs and you need to keep updating them so you have the best success, this really kind of makes it easier to do that. And then you can use a GPT. What we do this is a trained GPT to only focus on this task at hand. So
yeah, that's interesting. What other questions do we have? So Larry, you're familiar with Perplexity. So Calibrate and Perplexity. Larry, what are you using for Perplexity for?
Perplexity would be no different than what we use today.
Okay, so it's just it's
just a prompt.
Hey, that's another question. So I signed up for Grok and ChatGPT, and what I found was at first, there were some things that I really liked about Grok, but I didn't like many things about it. And then so I just, started investing more in ChatGPT for, content or just, building up its knowledge of me. And are there preferences that you found, Brad?
I think you said it well, is, different LLMs work differently and technology is going to evolve over time. And that's the beauty of complexity is, if the government cracks down on one or one, gets in a bad spot, you can just easily pivot to the other one. And if you don't like the answer that one gave you, you can just pivot to the other one. And you might find that you like one over time, but then that might change over time. Technology will change. I've haven't switched to Perplexity because I'm still using OpenAI and I really like that model. But eventually, I'll move all of my data over here because it's the same price and you get all of them. So it just really kind of makes sense to kind of do that. And then if for some reason you don't like one, you can easily pivot to the other one. At work, we use Google for everything. So we really try to keep
Is that Google Claude? Isn't Claude Google?
Gemini.
Oh, Gemini.
Claude. So this kind of has them all in here. Anthropic is Claude. OpenAI is GPT. Google's called Gemini. X.AI, that's Elon Musk's company, that's called Grok. And then Perplexity has their own, so it's called Sonar. So they offer their own. So you're getting their proprietary one, but they give you access to basically everything but DeepSeek.
So yeah, Anne Marie, try putting the same prompt in several LLMs and then you'll see. Yeah, I did that as well, Anne Marie. And what I found was that Grok was a little bit too I think ChatGPT can be overly verbose, but Grok,
I do
go
it
ahead.
I do it regularly. So I have 3 of them open at the same time usually, and I'll take my prompt and put it in. And so what you'll find, and you'll get an idea of accuracy. and also get an idea of generalization. I think ChatGPT generalizes things a lot more. Your comment. So yeah, you can use Perplexity as a search engine, but I think the thing I really like about Perplexity is it'll actually give you the sources. It will tell you the sources of where it got all the information from. And so, like I said, I think you can start to learn and figure out, what are the different pros and cons of different ones. And I always like to use the same prompt several times in them because you get very different perspectives. And I'll take and start a new session with the same one, and I'll ask the prompt in a little different way. Because if I ask the prompt a little different way in the same session, it just iterates on whatever that context was. So it's just taking the model and it's just kind of fine tuning it, as opposed to if I take it and start a new session, it could give me a completely different answer.
The other thing, Anne Marie, as you were talking, ChatGPT has an add-on called Prompt Maker. And so you can have it make a prompt, and just by using narrative to say, here's what I'm trying to do. And then it creates a prompt. I did programming way in college. And so it was interesting because as I was putting it together, it was like, okay, this is kind of like basic code. And it's just very simple instructions. And so Prompt Maker and it's free, and it helps to really refine what it is that you're trying to accomplish there. And then you can modify it based on that, because then it's like, oh, you know what, I need to add this because it's likely going to do this. And so
Yeah, it's a great kind of point to add. I'd love to hear from other people like Anne Marie that might have some additional thoughts. I'm definitely not probably the smartest person on this call, but there's so much facets to AI. But to your point, like in the future, any job that you have, and regardless of whether you have AI or not, it's the critical thinking that's going to make you above the AI. So you have to have the question to ask the business, what do we need? And then you can go ask a GPT and it'll get you, 80% there. So you talk to, all your stakeholders and your teammates. So you're, asking more questions instead of just, sending stuff over, and saying FYI. Now you can kind of share some thoughts on every topic. But also, the AI is only going to do what you ask it to do. So it's an assistant. You have to tell it what to do, and you have to give it the parameters of, what to work around. So that's the other thing too. AI can help you do tasks, but it's up to you to kind of, make sure the data is accurate, and then also that you're giving it the right prompting to help it achieve the outcome.
And that you're evaluating it. You're absolutely right. Alan, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, this is a great conversation. I agree with Brad. There's a number of these ChatGPT functions out there, different tools. In the chat, I love Visual Capital. I listed a great article, and it puts out the intelligence level behind the programming it, and they use the Mensa study. So it clearly, when you were asking about Gronk, Christy, it shows that Gronk has a lower IQ level than ChatGPT and others. So just kind of a helpful little tool for people. And you really have to put information into different AI tools to experience what kind of level of sophistication they have. So it's best to have 2 or 3 of them, maybe 4, the big 4, big 5, and use them in different capacities. But I thought this article would be helpful for people who are trying to understand the differences between them.
And that is helpful. And what I found was Grok was way too patronizing. And it was like, shut up, just stop with the overly complimentary stuff. I don't want to hear it. Just give me the facts. And, it's like, well, and then it gets way too flowery. It's like, finally, I'm just like, okay, you're dead to me. I don't like you. And, I want to move on. And because it was literally patronizing. It's saying, well, and you just, did this so well, and you have a really deep way of thinking about it. And it's like, I don't need the kudos. I'm contacting you for facts. Give me facts. And
You don't like
so,
yourself enough?
no,
I'm just
but
messing.
that I'm just about facts. I don't I don't want to hear all this flowery stuff. I don't want, so much. You just give me what I've asked for. That's all I want. And so that helps. Um, Brad, can you share some of the creative things that you guys are incubating? Just give us like little pearls.
Yeah, really what we're doing is just kind of getting early adopters kind of turned on to it. So we're working with a 20 store nail salon to kind of infuse AI with their call center, or with, answering their 20 locations. We're working with restaurants right now. So that's kind of where we're at. We're an early stage startup and we're kind of really looking for a vertical that we can kind of get deep in. So definitely open to working with anyone on this call if you're going into a business that could use our services, or if you're starting a business, you no longer need to hire like robust sales and support teams, and you should really be thinking about how to, equip your businesses with low cost AI to support your employees and to help them do more elevated tasks, and then use AI to kind of automate some of the um, more mundane tasks, and that can be automated. And then more importantly, I look at our company as making brands more accessible. So I look at all the brands I grew up with, I look at the brands that I love, and AI makes it easier to reach those brands, and it makes it easier to do business with those brands. And therefore, I want to buy more stuff with those brands. So to me, that's kind of part of what we all need to be doing, which is, optimizing our businesses with AI so we can reach more customers and grow our businesses and find more customers that are the right fit for our brands.
So, if people are working, or they know people who have small companies, just even to have a conversation with you and about how they can leverage AI. And I know you and I talked, and there's so many things that we can do as a company, and so we're starting to explore that. But the world of AI is just ginormous, right? And so it's like, we're trying to eat the elephant one bite at a time, and start with some LinkedIn or digital presence even, and then, figure out how to reach out to people in more authentic ways. And, so for LinkedIn, have you had any experience with using AI and LinkedIn to find potential targets for you?
That's a good question. I think, if you think about it, we've been using AI for a long time and embedded behind Netflix to help us find what we want. And it's really kind of the same thing inside LinkedIn. Like, you don't realize it, but LinkedIn's constantly making information surfacing to you easier. So all the suggestions they make, stuff like that. I personally use a Sales Navigator LinkedIn license. So it basically embeds kind of more of those algorithms into it, and yeah, it basically helps you identify a target list of companies you're looking for. It'll help you identify your ICP. Um, LinkedIn's really interesting. You can basically create a website on LinkedIn and not have to have a website if you wanted to purely run your business on LinkedIn. So they definitely have a lot of tools to help reach sales, but we've also, our company really goes after small businesses, and we've learned that a lot of those are not on LinkedIn. So a lot of them are on Facebook and Instagram. So you kind of have to look at your target market and make sure that
That's a good
it's what you're
point.
looking for.
That's a good point. Well, Brad, we are out of time, and thank you so much for joining us, for sharing, and I wish you really a lot of success with Adventive. It's I talked to you more in depth on the restaurant stuff that one time, and it is really interesting. And it's like, what restaurant wouldn't use it?
Mm.
It even goes to ingredients, and people can talk about allergies, and make sure that there are things that they can have when they have so many allergies. But thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're dark next week, but the following week we have Continuum talking about tax strategies. And as you get ready to or just planning for retirement well in advance in your 50s and even 40s, and then Then the 4th of July, I can't believe 4th of July is within our reach now. And then on the 11th, we have Ganesh, one of our very own, who's going to talk about job search and how to really leverage AI, and what he did that was absolutely phenomenal. So thank you all. Enjoy the weekend, stay safe, and it's always great to see you. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much, Brad.
Thanks, Christy. Thanks, everyone.
And remember to
Bye.
take
Bye,
take
guys.
care,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Take it
Stay with
easy.
God.
And happy Father's Day to all the fathers.
That's right.
Exactly. You
Yes.
gotta remember that.
Yeah. Bye, everyone.
I don't
Yeah, have
want
a
to
great
tie.
one.
Here's
Enjoy.
my tie.
See you in 2 weeks, I guess.
Yeah.